Hello and welcome to the first episode of Is It Good? With me, Sermit, or James. This week, I'm going to be looking at the Echo Saber. It's the flavour of the month. It's being picked up pretty haphazardly in pubs on pretty much any item that likes, any hero that likes to attack. In pro matches, a little bit more cautiousness. Tiny and Sven, it's becoming quite a core pickup, but out of 6.87, it's getting picked up considerably more than either of the other two big items, the Hurricane Pike or the Bloodthorn. So, to answer the question of whether or not Echo Saber is good and if it's worth your time, we're looking at it in terms of two aspects. First, average attack speed, and then second, burst attack speed. So, onto the item. The Echo Saber, as I think everyone knows, is reasonably well statted. Main difference, so strength, intelligence, attack speed. The mana duration is pretty good for some heroes, but that's okay. For most heroes, will be picking up first or second item at about 11, 15 to 20 minutes. So when I do analysis on this item, I'm going to do it in terms of a hero at that point in the game. It's getting picked up really on Slark, Sven, PA, Legion Commander, Ricky, Wraith King, and Tiny. These can be split to two main parts. The high damage strength heroes, which have low attack speed, Tiny, Wraith King, Sven, and then the attack ability modifier heroes, Slark, PA, Ricky. And we'll consider those two separately because they benefit it from Echo Saber for different reasons. But I think everyone knows what the item's about, what the passive about. It's the double hit. If you've ever picked it up, if you've ever seen anyone picked it up, you know what it does. So we'll get on to, first of all, just a quick overview of when you pick up attack speed and when you pick up damage. So the key to effectively itemizing your DPS is to build both damage and attack speed depending on which is lesser. So if you're a Tiny, you don't buy a Desolator because you have considerable damage but low attack speed. While on the contrary, in the same 13, if you're a Morphling, you don't pick up an AC because you have very high attack speed and you want damage instead to emphasize that attack speed. This is demonstrated in these next two graphs. So the first graph shows these set of lines which demonstrate different attack speeds going from 0.5 attacks per second to 3 attacks per second APS, and then a range of attack damage. So what you can see is the highest line has a much higher gradient, which means that a small increase in attack damage for the blue line, 3 attacks per second, gets considerably more increase in damage per second than the same increase in attack damage for 0.5 attacks per second. This shows that if you're a hero with 0.5 attacks per second, it's much more beneficial to increase your attack speed than to increase your attack damage. And as the next graph demonstrates, which shows 4 lines of attack damage, if you are a low attack speed hero, if you're a low attack damage hero, so you have 50 damage, it's much more effective to increase your damage, go up the line, so go from blue to red to green to purple, than going from along from left to right, moving up your attack speed. If you're on the blue line, you move up 1 attack per second, you get very, very little increased attack speed. It's very inefficient. While if you're on the purple line, you get double, maybe triple. You can go up from 1 to 2, you go up 200, 400 attack per second, which is a massive. So there's such a considerable difference there. And obviously these are the extremes, but they represent the case as a whole. And Dota isn't about the extremes, but still it's about min-maxing, and implementing this is how you carry that out. To demonstrate this, I want to do a quick example: Gloves of Haste versus Blades of Attack. So I normalized Blades of Attack on the left to do 11 damage for 500 gold. That's basically what you get if you scale up the cost. And you can compare the two. So case 1, you have 250 damage and 0.5 attacks per second. Your DPS is 125 attack. Blades of Attack give 130.5 and Gloves of Haste give 144. This is because you've got a very high attack damage and a low attack speed, and as mentioned previously, in this case, increasing your attack speed is more efficient. So you get 13.5 DPS extra with the gloves. And in the other case, the other extreme, when you have 75 damage and you have 2 attacks per second, you get a DPS of 125. The blades in this case give 172, while the gloves only give 157.5. And now we have 17.5 DPS increase more with the blades. So here in the second case, where you're at the other extreme, where you have 75 damage and loads of attack speed, you're already attacking really, really quickly, and if you can just get a tiny bit more attack damage out, you get a lot more from that. And that's why you see Tiny pick up the attack speed items, and you see more from the Agi heroes pick up the attack damage items. Also, to quickly mention, the reason why Agi heroes are so good is because they can pick up both of these at the same time with both agility, which gives them damage, and attack speed. But that's a conversation for another thing, as well as armor. Agi heroes are good carries, basically, is what I'm saying, as you already know. So, the first way, as I mentioned, Echo Saber is going to be analysed is in terms of just attack speed. How quickly can you attack on average? Basically, if you imagine every 5 seconds you attack 1 extra time. So, scaling this down, every 1 second you attack 0.2 extra time. And this can be backward engineered using the previously given equation, given equation, which I might link in the description, for increased attack speed. And so your increased attack speed value is 34. The increased attack speed value for a pair of gloves is 20. The item also gives an increased attack speed of 10, which I mentioned at the start, and which is in the item stats. So total, the Echo Saber, if you will just purely attack, so if you're just right-clicking a building or right-clicking an ancient, you would get plus 44 attack speed, which is basically 2 gloves, which comes up to 1,000 gold. So in terms of attack speed, it's not a good item. It's just inefficient. Even with the stats added on, it's still massively inefficient. This item, pardon me, if you are considering to buy it to farm or just to generally try to increase your average output, buy a Hyperstone. It's so much more attack damage. It's 10 extra IS for 600 gold less, and it builds into other stuff, and that's why it's so good, because Echo Saber is the top. You can't go anywhere from Echo Saber, which is another problem with the item. So point I'm making is it's not good in terms of average attack speed. The second area is where things get slightly more difficult. So first I want to explain how the passive works. So when you attack, your after the attack connects, and assuming the Echo Saber is on cooldown, your attack speed goes from maybe 10, 20, 50 IAS to that number plus 490. So if you initially had 0 IAS, you'd get 490. The thing about IAS is it's maxed at 500, so you will nearly always have plus 10 IAS, because Agi directly translates to IAS, increased attack speed, 1 for 1. So basically what this means is you will max out your IAS. The only time this won't happen is if you're playing Tiny and you get levels very quickly, because Grow gives you reduced attack speed, so that sometimes gives you negative IAS, but that's a very rare occurrence. On the whole, the way to look at this is it sets your attack to maximum is 3.5 attacks per second, or 0.28 seconds per attack, 0.3 seconds per attack. This means then that if you have a very high current IAS, so let's go to another extreme example, you're Alchemist, you popped your ult, and you're attacking 0.4 times per second, and now you get one more attack when you attack 0.1 seconds faster. It's basically not even noticeable. It's completely worthless at that point. You are never going to notice an extra attack, and even though you are getting a faster attack every 5 seconds, you are getting, in essence, an extra attack every 5 seconds. Its effectiveness, its percentage effectiveness, is negligible. And now I'm using these extreme examples to kind of make the point more clear, but hoping that this does demonstrate that when you are an Agi hero with quite high attack speed, if you've got 100, maybe 200 IAS, because you've got quite a few attack speed items, quite a few Agi items, this item starts to lose its effectiveness, which is why it's best to be sold in the late game, because there's no point having it just for the stats. So there is quite a cool passive bug on this though, and it's likely to get patched out as soon as people find out about this, but no one's going to watch this video, so don't worry. IAS, the way it works is that the second attack buff that I mentioned is permanent. It isn't time based, it doesn't run out after 5 seconds, it's not an attack, it's like an invisible modifier. So as soon as you cancel that attack, you keep that invisible modifier. So if you attack a creep and it dies, you just store that second attack, which is why sometimes when you're playing Echo Saber, you hit very quickly on your first attack and then on your second attack. So if you are to attack and then cancel, you can store up 2 500 attack speed attacks. And on a hero like Tiny, who has 250 damage, that's a lot of damage. That's 500 damage coming out of Shadow Blade. That's scary. And so they're low armor or low health. You can blow up heroes very quickly with your combo. It's quite cool. It's not that difficult to learn, to be honest. Just a couple of practice attempts on some creeps, and you can have quite a fun combo. So give it a try before it gets patched. Now, back to the serious stuff. The first set of sub-heroes I mentioned was that of high attack speed, low attack damage. No, high attack, low attack speed. Sorry, my bad. Sven and Tiny are the two main culprits here. Grow gives Tiny a increased attack speed for decreased attack, increased attack damage for decreased attack speed. So if we were to go back, remember those graphs I showed previously, showing that if you have low attack speed and high attack damage, getting an attack speed is very beneficial. So attack speed is already great on Tiny. The other thing on Tiny is that because he's got such crazy attack speed, if you are able to get out a second attack, which is how it, and basically have a pure DD, which is what it works as, which is your second attack is a 200 damage crit, 200% crit, which procs every single time. That's amazing if you've got really high base damage, which Tiny does have, and so he can get out in most attacks 2 hits off on 200 damage, meaning that he gets this DD and he's going to do so much damage. So it is really good on Tiny, and you will consistently see it picked up on Tiny. And I don't think there's much discussion. The main issue with Tiny is that Ags is really good, Blink is really good, Drums is really good. The time when you get Echo Saber is quite difficult. If you're going to buy Echo Saber, you might have to skip out Ags or get Ags afterwards, and that delays your farming a lot. So you've got to be going really fast to be able to get Blink, Aghanims, and then Echo Saber to be able to properly do that build. If you are going to skip out Ags, definitely get Echo Saber. Sven, on the other hand, buffs slightly differently because his ult, God Strength, benefits off his base damage. It means that Sven doesn't get any benefit from, or gets very little benefit from, base attack speed damage. Instead, Sven gets benefit from strength gain, as well as benefit from items which stack on top of his God Strength, like critical. And this, in essence, is another critical. So, when you pop that God Strength, this is a 200 damage critical guaranteed every 5 seconds. And when you blink in with the God Strength and the crit, it can be a crazy amount of damage, and you can do serious DPS. So, without God Strength, with God Strength cooldown, it lacks a lot of potential and it really starts being good. But because of Sven's limited by his ult, makes this item very good. Once again, you have problems of when to pick it up, but second or third item, or first or second item, it's pretty good. After, yeah, second or third, I mean, it's pretty good. So, on to the even more difficult heroes. Slark and crits. So Slark is, we'll talk about him last, very high attack speed, very low damage. So he doesn't normally benefit off attack speed, but because of Essence Shift, he kind of breaks the trend. Phantom Assassin, Wraith King, critical hits, and this is what we're going to talk about first. Pardon me. So, there's 2 ways of analysing critical hits. First, average DPS, which is what you normally see on something like Doze Wiki. Basically just averages out the procs and says how much damage you'll likely get. But we're not going to look at that. We want to look at the burst bit. And the way to do that is to consider pseudo-random distribution. So pseudo-random distribution is difficult to say. It is a way of replicating crit chances to make them more evenly balanced, so you don't get 6 crits in a row or miss 6 crits in a row. This means that your first hit has a 3.2 chance of critting, the next one has double that, so 6.4, the next one has 3 times that, 3 times the first, so 9.6, and then so on and so forth, which means that if you've attacked 3 times already in your 4th attack, this equation, 2n plus 1 times 3.2, where n is 4 because you've already attacked 3 times, gives you about 30% chance to crit. So quite high, but it's not that good. And I think this is much more difficult to mathematically analyse or model because it's about how you play PA. If you just go in haphazardly and basically rely on crits, it's a good item. It means you're more likely to get a crit. But the way I personally play here, and the way I think PA is better played, is to play it more reserved, to build mobility items, to build some sort of tank and build some sort of lockdown, and then just keep testing the water with your dagger and with your right click until you get a crit, backing up, hitting, going, backing up, going back in, and then committing once you get the crit. So you're never dependent on getting that crit. You just use that crit to start the fight and putting them on the lower footing when you start the fight, which means that increasing your chances isn't that really that important. You'd be much more happy to have a BKB when the fight started, or have a basher, or just have some more damage to increase the crit output. Wraith King has a low attack speed, which means that he benefits from the double attack, but PA doesn't have this, and it just isn't that good for PA. So I would not recommend picking this up item of PA. There's too many other good items, and Wraith King kind of have the same problem. There's so many good items at the moment. Blade Mail, Armlet, Radiance is pretty good. If you pick him an Echo Saber, you may just think, why don't I have an Armlet? And if you do have an Armlet, it's taking quite long to get your Echo Saber. So also, as soon as you start building your attack speed items, Echo Saber loses its effectiveness. So I wouldn't pick it up. And last but not least, the Little Fish. So basically, the main reason people give for buying Echo Saber on Schlark is partly the stats. The stats are pretty good. I will admit that the mana regeneration, the mana, the strength, the attack speed are all good on Schlark. It's what Schlark wants. It synergizes really well. So it should be admitted that Schlark does synergize well. But once again, there's a lot of items which synergize well with Schlark. The additional action attack is crap. Don't even consider it. Getting 2 hits off, that's only good for damage. It's only good for trying to get procs off. If you want to get more stacks, just buy an Orb Venom. It's not worth it at all for that extra stack because it's 3 agi. It is just worthless. To kind of show when it's good and when it's bad, I'm going to look at it in terms of comparing to Basher, which is basically the same cost. Gives the same strength, but it doesn't have that mana and regeneration and attack speed. So, Echo Strike. Procs every 5 seconds for 1 extra attack. So what you can say is that every 5 seconds, if you were level 5 Schlark with a Yasha and Sange and a Shadow Blade, you do 120 damage after armor. And so when you get that extra proc, you do 120 nuke and you get 3 agility. The 3 agility is worthless. It's so little. Schlark benefits from stacks when he has 30, when he has 40, when he has 35, not when he has 2. If you're buying this item to get that 2 or 3 extra in the fight, just stop playing Schlark. If you really, really want 3 agility, buy some slippers and play the game that way. But that's not how you play Schlark. Though the nuke, to be honest, isn't bad though. 120 nuke on a maybe 800, 900 HP support is pretty nice. If they're 700 HP, you can take them out quite quickly. So that side of it, I think, is quite good, and that's where it's the benefit lies the most. Does have the problem though that Schlark's already got quite high attack speed, so it loses effectiveness and quite low damage, and in that case it might be better just buying attack items. As for Basher, it procs 25%, so you can say 1 in 4, you get 1.4 second stun, you get 85 damage, and then it puts on cooldown for 3.2 seconds. So using those same items I said before, Sange and Yasha and Sange plus Shadow Blade, you're going to proc on average every 5.1 seconds. So I worked out the attack speed, and I worked out and I added to that I averaged that out and added that to the cooldown, and you get 5.1 seconds, which is basically coincidentally exactly the same as the Echo Saber. So you can view them as proccing the same both proccing for every 5 seconds. So every 5 seconds, would you rather have a second attack, or would you rather have a 1.4 second stun and 85 damage nuke? So you've got 40 damage less than the nuke, but you have got a stun, and during that stun you can attack twice more, which is now 240. So you're now getting more damage output, and you can steal 2 essence stacks. So this is when it is amazing. Basher, if you're going for solo pickoffs and you're just right clicking somebody, Basher is just better. And as soon as you start to build your attack speed, Basher's better. It scales so much better into the late game. If you can pick up Echo Saber really early, it's got some advantages. If you're backing out of a fight and going back in, it's got some advantages. But Basher, to start off with, and at about 25 minutes in, does so much more. The stun is so much more powerful. It does have the randomness, and it doesn't proc immediately, which is where Echo Saber benefits, but the proc is low and you're going to be probably hitting quite a lot, so it's not that important. Overall, if you're going Blink Dagger, if you're not going to get damage items, just get a Basher. You're not going to have enough damage to make it worthwhile. The second attack is just going to not do enough. If your damage is about 120 to 150, there's no point buying Echo Saber. You need more damage. If you've gone Silver Edge and you maybe bought some more Agi items, you've got a Yasha, you've got another damage item, Echo Saber does become good. It does become quite a good burst nuke, and you can gank quite well with it. It also has a very strong ability when you're going out of fights and coming back in. That's quite hard to analyse as well. If you walk out, wait 5 seconds and go back in, it's annoying to your team, but it's much more effective than Basher. On top of that, the stats are really good. I think that's the main benefit of this item on Slark. But once again, Skadi, Orchid, just Bottle. There's a lot of other ways to get mana regen on Slark, so you shouldn't be picking this item up for solely Slark. But I think that there is a range of... I don't want to dismiss this out of hand, basically, is what I'm saying. I'm saying that there is a foreseeable set of criteria which could be met, in which you have high damage, you have maybe a lot of team fights, and Echo Saber works quite well. So it may be that it's not necessarily always the worst pick, but on the whole I think there is better items. So what I've tried to show is that on heroes like Tiny and Sven, it's really good, and I think it will keep getting picked up. Competitive matches, we're seeing it picked up a lot on Tiny and Sven, and it will continue to get picked up a lot. There's pretty strong item competition. It's hard to sort the two out to make sure that it is better than the other items, because there's some really good items at the moment, but I think we will continue to see it get picked up on Tiny pretty much every time it gets played, and about 70% of the time that Sven is played in competitive matches, expect to see an Echo Saber. For low attack heroes, it's just not worth it. There's such better items. Slark, it's good, it could be justified, but I really don't think it's rare, and on the whole it shouldn't be an automatic pickup. I think that's the take home message, is that don't just buy an Echo Saber because you can buy an Echo Saber. You have to have a very specific reason as to why Echo Saber is better than Basher, and better than working towards the Skadi, and better than these other items you could get. And if you can't think of those reasons, just get one of these items which is more consistently picked up and has a higher win rate. Finally, I want to talk about some special mentions of heroes which I think this hero would be, which I think this will be quite good on. So Tree, it's going to be amazing on Tree. Tree has such low attack speed and such high attack damage. It's so cool. But don't do it though. I don't want people to ruin their pubs. Let NA do it at Manila. They can sort out how to do it properly. It'll be hilarious. It'll be great. Ricky, with Backstab, you get very high attack damage, and getting that double nuke out can do some serious damage. You're guaranteed to get the second Backstab because it attacks so quickly, so you can put up some serious damage very, very quickly. Against squishy sports, it could be pretty good. Two problems. First, it doesn't have any agi, so it's anti-synergistic. Second, it doesn't count towards your ult, so it's anti-synergistic. And this is the problem with Ricky, which is that Ricky just benefits so much off agility items that even though it's a really good item on him, an Eagle Song is a better item because it gives you a crazy amount of damage. It gives you like 2.4 times the agi, while another hero would only get the agi, so it's just outclassed. But I think it could work. So overall, if you're telling Tynos Sven, your team's telling you not to pick it up, just ignore them. I think you can pick it up. If you're playing Slark and your team tells you to pick it up, maybe don't call them a scrub or a Peruvian or a Russian. Maybe they're talking sense and it's worth to consider your item pick. But thank you for listening. If you've got any feedback about why you think I'm wrong, or maybe why you think I'm right, if you're feeling a particularly good node, please let me know. I'll try to reply to most comments. You can tweet at me if I have a Twitter. I probably have Twitter. Or you can watch me on stream, because I stream sometimes. Anyway, thank you for watching. Have a nice day.